Vin Ballin's back. Let's react. Right now, we're gonna react to why the NBA hated Allen Iverson. Now, I heard something about this, and it's because that Iverson really changed the culture of the NBA. The league wouldn't be the same, honestly. Like in style, yeah. Let's go.
It's almost unbelievable how much one player can be successful and adored by the fans and get hated and pushed down by the very league he plays in. Allen Iverson was the NBA MVP and one of its best ever scorers, and yet he got constantly harassed by the media, which
Bro, look at the swag, bro.
caused him to leave the game prematurely. Here's the story of the rise and fall of Allen Iverson and why he was the most beloved and the most hated NBA superstar ever. A style that the NBA despised.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. This was what I was talking about. The NBA didn't like his style, but look at the NBA now. Everybody got inspired by Iverson.
Came to the NBA, he already had a bad rep. At the age of 17, he was wrongly accused of injuring a woman in a bowling alley fight, even though nobody with common sense could realize that a five-star athlete wouldn't hit a random woman with a chair. Iverson got singled out because he was famous and got sentenced to 5 years in prison, of which he served 4 months due to a lack of evidence. Before the bowling alley incident, Allen could choose where he wanted to go to college, but
Okay, I didn't know that he went to prison. I didn't know that.
after it, the scholarships vanished like donuts in front of Charles Barkley. But after a lengthy letter from his mother, Georgetown's coach John Thompson offered him a scholarship. Iverson became one of the best players in Hoya's history, after which the 76ers selected him first overall in the 1996 NBA draft. The 90s ISO-heavy style of basketball suited Allen Iverson, like tight jeans suit J-Lo's posterior, perfectly. AI was spectacular from the start, averaging 23
Ooh.
points as a rookie. When he shook Jordan and scored on him, the NBA had gotten its next big star with a great game and the swagger to match it. And while the rest of the 90s players wanted to imitate Jordan and his Wall Street suits, Iverson wanted to imitate rappers. The 90s were the bling bling era in hip hop, and Iverson was the middleman between rap and the NBA. And because of his success on the court, swaggy clothes, and nonconformist interviews, Iverson became a trendsetter. After Jordan retired in 1998, NBA players rejected the suits and traded them for cornrows, baggy jeans, saggy sweatpants,
Exactly.
throwback football jerseys, jewelry, do-rags, and hats. And there was no question who they got it from. It was a direct copy from Iverson. His appearance, his persona, and his game went together perfectly, and AI became a style and cultural icon. And even though the youth and his peers loved it, Commissioner David Stern and the top NBA executives hated it. Despite making a lot of money off Iverson, whose superstardom filled up every arena, they hated that the league was now associated with rap, guns, jewelry, weed, and alcohol. Stern threatening to ban him from the NBA. Because of the way he looked, talked, and acted, and because he hung out with guys with criminal records, and because he was in jail himself, Allen Iverson became the most interesting and polarizing NBA player who constantly filled the newspaper pages. When Iverson recorded a gangster rap album in 2000 under the nickname Jules, releasing the lead single 40 Bars, it received enormous backlash, even though other NBA players have done the same thing in the past. Sure, it wasn't a particularly great song, and it was filled with profanity and homophobic lyrics. Then again, so were all the other gangster rap albums of that era. David Stern was furious, and he said that Iverson embarrassed himself, his team, and the entire NBA. He threatened to ban Iverson from playing if the album was ever released for mass consumption. Iverson's defense was simple. He said that if you don't want to listen to it, simply don't buy the album, not fully realizing the magnitude of his superstardom and the effect these lyrics might have. But eventually, AI caved in, and the album never saw the light of day. Next season, Iverson played the best basketball of his career, won the regular season MVP, and pushed the mediocre Sixers team to the 2001 NBA Finals. Constant media backlash, and the practice rant. In 2002, Iverson led the NBA in scoring and steals for the second straight year and was voted to the first All-NBA team. But even though he produced on the court, the media wouldn't let him off the hook. After he got into a public argument with his wife, somebody made up a story that he threw her out of the house naked. Even though there was no evidence, and the story wasn't true, seemingly every media outlet ran with that story, portraying Iverson as a thug and a bully once again. Reporters were camping outside of Iverson's home for days, hoping to get a hot take and sell the narrative. A negative story about Allen was going to sell regardless of who told it, their credibility, and if it was true. That's how big of a star he was, and the media used and manipulated that. On May 7th, 2002, Iverson was doing a press conference after Philadelphia's first-round playoff exit, which came at the same time as the death of Iverson's best friend, and Allen was in the worst of moods. And then, the media started asking him about missing practice, which became one of the most famous sound bites in NBA history. We just lost in the playoffs. My best friend died a few days ago, and you're here asking me about practice. We're in here and we're talking about practice. Iverson's reaction was completely normal regarding the circumstances, mentioning practice that at the time made no sense at all. Yeah, Iverson wasn't always attending morning shoot-arounds, and he was perpetually late, but the dude just won the MVP a year ago, led the league in scoring twice, and had just averaged 30 points in that first-round loss. But the media kept provoking him, trying to bait him into speaking his mind, and saying something that would sell newspapers. If some other NBA player talked about his friend dying and not wanting to talk about practice, reporters would have likely behaved differently. However, because it was Allen Iverson, they made it look like Iverson never practiced in his life. And that whole news conference became legendary because AI said the word practice 24 times. And Kobe asked for Shaq to be traded, and when he later criticized his teammates and shot the ball 35 times a night, the media would often write that he didn't have any help. When Iverson shot a lot, they called him a selfish ball hog. The dress code. After 2004 and the infamous Malice at the Palace, the NBA's reputation was at an all-time low. During David Stern's reign as the commissioner, the league was losing money, and Stern was pissed like never before. He wanted to clean up the image of the NBA and make the game more attractive for fans, and more importantly, for corporate sponsors. Stern made plenty of changes to get rid of the thuggish image that permeated the NBA, and the main thing was that he instituted a new dress code. The league banned sleeveless shirts, shorts, hats, football jerseys, do-rags, jewelry, and Timberland boots, and instituted that the players came to the arena dressed like bankers and not like rappers. Even though nobody from the NBA confirmed this, the dress code was the direct attack on Allen Iverson, who was the pioneer of hip-hop in the NBA, hated by the referees. Apart from Stern, NBA owners, and executives, Iverson wasn't particularly liked by the refs either. After he publicly criticized referee Steve Javie, he got fined $25,000. But the refs were angry because they felt he needed to be suspended. So, they decided to get revenge. According to Tim Donaghy, the NBA referee, who ended up in prison for betting on NBA games, we felt as a group that he should have been suspended, and because he wasn't, we felt like we would teach him a lesson, Donaghy said. Donaghy also said that he would bet against Iverson and his teams after he heard which refs were assigned to Iverson's games, because he knew that if a referee disliked Iverson, that he would not get any calls in his favor, and that his team would lose. Premature departure from the NBA. In 2005,
Yo, bro, the way Allen Iverson left the league was one of the saddest things ever. And one of the most disrespectful things, especially that he was a superstar.
just traded Iverson to Denver after several early playoff exits. With the Nuggets, Iverson actually played some of the most efficient basketball of his career, but they decided not to extend his contract after 2 seasons and traded him to Detroit. And that's when it all started to go downhill for Iverson. With the Pistons, Iverson got relegated to the bench, despite averaging a solid 18 points per game at the age of 33 and making an all-star team. The media did their thing, and they blamed Iverson for the Pistons not making the playoffs, despite AI playing only half the season for the team. He got chastised. He was called selfish and a bad teammate, and as a result, no team wanted to sign him in the offseason, other than the lowly Memphis Grizzlies, who were bound for the lottery. After only 3 games with Memphis, Iverson asked for a leave of absence, after which the Grizzlies waived him. AI was 34 at the time. Wasn't as quick as he once was, but he was still good enough to play in the NBA. After he got waived, no team wanted to sign him, even though a 38-year-old Shaq and Tracy McGrady with busted knees got an NBA contract, despite being far less productive than AI at that time. And then, after several months where Iverson thought he was retired, the Philadelphia 76ers called him to come home.
Hey.
Iverson returned to Philly, where he was greeted like a king, and he played solid, with 14 points on average. However, on March 2nd, 2010, Iverson asked to be removed from the team due to the serious illness of his daughter and wanting to spend time with his family in tough times. After that, AI never played another minute in the NBA again. He was only 34 years old, and he could have definitely helped a contender, but nobody wanted anything to do with Iverson, largely because of false media narratives. It was extremely similar to the Carmelo Anthony situation in 2018. After Houston had waived him, Melo was unable to find a team and was out of the NBA for a year until Portland gave him a shot, and where he was immediately able to prove his worth, averaging 15 points per game, one of the best marks in the league for an older player. Legacy. Being real to a fault. Iverson was frustrated with the NBA, and he didn't want to say stuff just because some PR guy told him to. In 2009, he was asked about the NBA Cares program, and without hesitation, he simply said that it's fake and that he prefers to help others when the cameras aren't around. Due to his realness and nonconformity, his fans adored him even more for saying things like that, and the NBA's top executives hated him even more. Iverson was extremely polarizing, and there was no in-between. People who loved him, they thought he was a 6-foot David who dominated the game of Goliaths, unapologetically driving to the basket time and time again, no matter how many times big guys have hit him and laid his skinny ass down. Those who hated him called him a ball hog, who played selfish and inefficient basketball and didn't care or respect his coach and his teammates. In a way, both groups were right. Due to his insane speed and impeccable handles, Iverson could embarrass opponents like very few other people. In almost every game, he produced something for the highlight reel, even though he was 160 pounds soaking wet. But this was the guy who never lifted weights, who wasn't getting up before noon. If the team scheduled a morning shoot-around, Iverson was usually not there. He was operating on Allen time. And if this didn't suit you, well, that's your problem. If you had to shoot a commercial, the director wasn't in charge of the working hours. Iverson was. If he wanted to leave off the set, Allen would just do it, and he didn't really give a damn about anybody else. However, that all fades away when you know that Iverson played the 2001 season with 24 different injuries, and ultimately led the NBA in scoring and won the MVP award. Do you think that the Rolling Stones came to meetings on time and were darlings to deal with? No, of course they weren't. They are still arguably the most popular band in history. Just like with the Stones, you have to let some things slide with Iverson, because everyone knew when they got on that stage, you could always count on them giving 110%. If you just looked at the box score, you would not be impressed due to the amount of shots Iverson took. But if you watched him play, you'd be amazed every time. And that's something no statistic can describe. And if you compare his unapologetic, no BS comments with the PR-polished news conferences of today, you realize that Iverson is a relic of the past and understand why he is still more popular than half of the current NBA players.
Alright, you guys, that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.